This was a really, really difficult situation for the referee. I think from the collision with Van Dijk with his own player, I think the ball was in the back of the net 7 seconds later.
I wonder whether or not the fact that it happened inside 2 minutes has any impact on the referee's desire to stop the game at that point.
It was a really difficult situation and one I wouldn't really want to find myself in.
Chris, we are in a good place with Handball. Foy, I suppose this is another example that backs up your theory that England are leading the way with correct interpretation of this archaic law.
I think there's an acceptance now with situations like this that I was comfortable with that one. I don't think that was a handball offence. We're now talking about phraseology, aren't we? A touch on the ball, did he play the ball? You'd be struggling to give a penalty when somebody plays the ball like Kevin did.
It's the second time, though, in 3 Premier League games that Arsenal have been given penalties on the field only for the VAR to recommend a review. Are fans going to start crying conspiracy theory here? Remember, if you want to go back and listen or watch any of the previous episodes, find us on the talkSPORT YouTube channel or in the Premier League All Access feed, wherever you get your podcast. We begin this week's episode at Anfield.
The Liverpool supporters not happy about the decision to allow the play continue after Alexis McAllister collided with Mbeumo. They suggest that there was a head injury and it should have been stopped immediately. The referee did not blow the whistle, Michael Oliver, and as a result of that, the goal will stand. But Arne Slot is not happy about it, Alex Crook.
No, and actually McAllister is still down receiving treatment. I'm tending to agree with Perry Groves. I think it was a good advantage played by the referee. Virgil van Dijk is obviously of a different opinion and he's voicing that opinion. I looked up at the clock, Sam, when the ball hit the back of the net. I made it 62 seconds, I think, when Brian Mbeumo put United in front.
Liverpool 1, Manchester United 2. Referee was Michael Oliver, VAR Darren England. I wonder, 63 seconds into the game, Manchester United go ahead, but should the game have been stopped in the build-up to Mbeumo's opener? He goes up for a header. Alexis McAllister and Virgil van Dijk are in there as well. United win possession, the ball spills out. The ball eventually comes to Diallo and he feeds Mbeumo and they score. On the touchline, Arne Slot is absolutely furious. He thinks the game should have been stopped when Michael Oliver saw the incident, which resulted in a cut to the head of McAllister. Why didn't he stop it, Chris?
A couple of things. One, I'm not sure he did see it, and if he did see it, this always falls into the realm of the referee, to stop the game for a serious injury. This was a really, really difficult situation for the referee because when I looked at this back, I think from the collision with Van Dijk with his own player, and obviously VAR can't get involved because there's no foul.
No.
I think the ball was in the back of the net 7 seconds later. So you've got this really tight period of play where you're damned if you do, if you're damned if you don't. I've been in a situation where you blow the whistle quickly. Can you imagine blowing the whistle quickly when Mbeumo's shot, the ball's sailing into the top corner, you look back and the player's standing up. It's a really, really difficult one. I've got massive sympathy with the referee on this one. As I said, I don't know if he saw it, and if he did, that's down to him. If he feels as though it was a serious injury. And when the goal is scored, when I look back and I've watched it again, there's no real complaints from anyone. It's just one of those situations, Sam, that we don't see very often, and I have real sympathy here.
I noticed, actually, because I was at the game, that when the ball hits the back of the net and the goal is awarded, the Liverpool players just walk back to the halfway line. Some of them haven't realised that there's a player down at that moment. Obviously, there was an injury to McAllister. It was a head injury, and it was quite a bad one, actually. And actually, this sort of maybe spurs on the conversation that when you're in that situation, maybe we could have the rugby style sort of physios where they come on while play develops if there is a serious injury like that. Because as the ball goes down the other end, there was room for someone to come on and just check that he was okay. But I wonder whether or not the fact that it happened inside 2 minutes has any impact at all on the referee's desire to stop the game at that point.
No, not at all. I mean, you're really pumped up for games like this, aren't you? These are the games you want to be involved in, and Michael would have been on the money with that one. But coming back to your point, I mean, one of the things I've talked about in years gone by, somebody says to me, what rule would you change? What law would you change in football? And it's exactly what you've said. Letting the physios come on while the game's in play. But we don't have that. I mean, we also see situations in matches where a player will get injured and a referee will say, you're going to have to see the physio, get the physio, and they don't want to see the physio. And you've got to take you've got to take control of that. And even when they've had treatment, sometimes they don't want to go off. But you're the person as a referee who decides whether it's a serious injury. And you're not a doctor, you're not a medical person. You're using your intuition in those situations.
Is there actually anything in the law about stopping play for head injuries, or is it just one of those unwritten rules of football?
Good question. The law talks about two things. If you're slightly injured, let play continue. If you're seriously injured, how do you define serious? As I said, referees aren't doctors or medical people. I think sometimes we know what a serious injury was. I think in this situation, McAllister went off, got a little bit of treatment and came back on, which would suggest he wasn't seriously injured. So yeah, it was a really difficult situation and one I wouldn't really want to find myself in, but sympathy with the ref in this situation over the really short period of time when this incident occurred.
And it's nothing to do with the fact that his teammate initiates contact. I think it was Van Dijk who sort of causes the issue with the header, that the referee can't stop the game because of that, because it's not a foul.
No, I mean, if a player gets injured and he's seriously, it doesn't matter how they get injured, you'd always stop the game. It's not one for VAR, as we mentioned, because it wasn't a foul, it was just an accident.
There was a potential handball from Ahmad in the 18th minute. Cody Gakpo going down the left-hand side, sends a cross into the box. That appeared to hit the arm of the United wing-back. Michael Oliver said play on. VAR didn't get involved. Was that the right decision?
Yeah, it was very close, but his arm was close into his body. He's turning away. I think there's an acceptance now with situations like this. I was comfortable with that one. I don't think that was a handball offence.
The referee's call of no penalty was checked and confirmed by the VAR, with it deemed that Ahmad's arm was in a natural and justifiable position. And Chris, we are in a good place with Handball Foy. I suppose this is another example that backs up your theory that England are leading the way with correct interpretation of this archaic law.
100%. I'm getting a T-shirt made, Sam. I'm not messing about anymore.
Good stuff. Okay, let's move on. Fulham 0, Arsenal 1. Referee Anthony Taylor, VAR Stuart Atwell at Craven Cottage on Saturday night, 5:30. Arsenal had a penalty overturned. They thought they'd been given a spot kick when Kevin fouled Saka. 65 minutes on the clock. Saka dribbles into the box, into the the Fulham penalty area before Kevin lunged in. Now, the Arsenal skipper went to ground as the ball rolled away, with the referee Anthony Taylor immediately pointing to the spot. But he was called over to the monitor and the penalty was overturned and a drop ball given to the goalkeeper. Now, the referee announcement was that after review, the Fulham player made a challenge and plays the ball. Therefore, no foul is committed. No penalty is the decision, and restart for a drop ball is awarded to the goalkeeper. Now, is this a correct decision and good use of VAR, or did the match officials actually miss the knee-on-knee contact?
Really good question. I think this is a fine intervention because Anthony Taylor's position was really, really good. But what I don't think he realised, I don't think he'd actually seen the contact on the ball. I don't think he'd seen the ball being played by, obviously the Fulham player, Kevin. And when you're in the middle and you're making these decisions, he will have said no penalty, doesn't play the ball. The VAR will look at that. And I think the fly in the ointment with this one, because it took a little bit of time to get to the right angle, the right camera angle, people were then saying, is this a clear and obvious error? It's taken a bit of time. But when you look at the definitive angle, I think you can clearly see that he does play the ball. Now, we know there is a little bit of contact, and contact is a normal part of football, but he clearly plays the ball. I mean, how you can give a penalty when somebody plays the ball beggars belief in that regard. I mean, I listened to Jonathan Pearce, who was commentating on the game, and when he actually said, this will be overturned, he clearly plays the ball. And I think Arsenal will feel a little bit hard done by. I understand that. But in my opinion, I think this was the right outcome.
Okay, so are we back to a place now where contact on the ball, however small, negates any suggestion of a foul, or is there still subjective degrees of that? And if that is the case, how is it a clear and obvious error?
Well, I think it was clear because Anthony Taylor's given the penalty because he doesn't see Kevin play the ball. he doesn't see that. And obviously...
So we're forgetting the knee-on-knee contact now.
Well,
that doesn't matter.
You're talking about knee-on-knee contact, but he's challenging for the ball and there's slight contact, but he clearly plays the ball. I mean, how do you give a penalty in that situation when somebody gets the ball? We can go back to the Newcastle game. I'd obviously said on that one, I felt that was a penalty and there was reasons afterwards why that wasn't given. But when Anthony Taylor looks at that, who's one of our, top referees, this is a person who's refereeing around Europe and he's refereeing in the World Cup. He has the opportunity to go to the monitor, which he did, and he looks at that and he sees every angle he needs to look at. And he doesn't see him play the ball. And I think we're now talking about phraseology, aren't we? A touch on the ball. Did he play the ball? You'd be struggling to give a penalty when somebody plays the ball like Kevin did.
Okay, it's the second time, though, in 3 Premier League games that Arsenal have been given penalties on the field, only for the VAR to recommend a review. Are fans going to start crying conspiracy theory here?
I get a lot of noise on my timeline from Arsenal.
You do
yeah,
now.
I do now.
Now you're going viral every week.
Now from Arsenal fans and listen, they can drop the comments in on the chat, and they can do that and give me their observations and tell me what they think. I'm quite comfortable with it. Conspiracy theory? No, not at all. I mean, referees just referee a game of football and apply the laws to the best of their ability.
55 minutes on the clock. Does Victor Gyökeres do himself out of a penalty? Because he actually stays on his feet when maybe he could have gone down. He clashes with Jorge Cuenca inside the box, tries to get a shot away, loses his balance. He only had Bernd Leno to beat. And actually, if he had gone down after a clip on his ankle, maybe he would have got a penalty. Do players need to go to ground to get a decision? If he had gone down there, would he have got a penalty?
Well, that would be in the eyes of the referee making that decision. I think there is a little bit of contact, and I think the phrase there is a small amount of contact, and he goes to ground. The preference this season has not been to penalise minimal contact. I spoke recently on talkSPORT Breakfast to Gabby Agbonlahor, and one of the things he talked about was he was really impressed this season with the way the referees weren't penalising minimal contact on the field. And I think that was a really good example of that, where yes, there is a little bit of contact. It's minimal. Let the play continue. That's not a penalty for me. And if I'm refereeing that game, Sam, and I've looked at it back, that clip, I am certainly not giving a penalty.
Okay, let's crack on. Crystal Palace 3, Bournemouth 3, and the referee Jared Gillett here is getting a lot of praise after conversation with VAR Alex Chilovitz. Another unique moment in Premier League history, because we had a potential denial of a goal-scoring opportunity rejected. Now, Marco Senesi was adjudged to have fouled Ismaila Sarr. The Crystal Palace attacker was going through on goal. Now, I think at the time everybody thought no opposition defender, he's gone down, there looks like there's contact. Why only a yellow card? They go over to the monitor, and actually when he's reviewed all of the angles, he says the player is going wide and there was a covering defender. Now, 2 things here. Was the decision correct? And the second thing is how impressed were you that Jared Gillett decided to stick with his guns?
Yeah, I'm really impressed. I mean, I thought Jared Gillett refereed this game really well, and he was very positive with this situation. That Sarr was fouled by Senesi, down he goes, yellow card, and there's nothing at that time that says to me this is a red card for denial of a goal-scoring opportunity. As you say, Sam, the ball was going wide, there was a covering defender, but Alex Chilovitz, who was the VAR, felt that it met the criteria for the denial of an obvious goal-scoring opportunity, and he recommended the review. I was surprised at this one, to be fair. And when Jared Gillett went to the monitor and stayed with his decision, I wasn't surprised. And, it just goes to prove that when they do go to the monitor, sometimes they will stay with the on-field decision. And Jared received a lot of praise for this, and rightly so, because what we talk about in refereeing is when you make decisions, a lot of them hit you in the stomach and it just comes to you. It's sort of, that's that. This didn't feel like the denial of an obvious goal scoring opportunity to me. I just didn't see it. And I was really pleased that Jared stayed with his on-field decision. And as I said, he's got some real praise and some real credit for doing that, and rightly so.
Do you think the fact that there is just the tiniest of touches from Senesi and Sarr goes down in instalments plays on his mind as well?
No, I think it was the way he got fouled. I think his foot was sort of trapped under Senesi's leg, and he tried to carry on and he couldn't. which was difficult. But by that time, the ball was spinning away to the right-hand side. There was a covering defender. As I said, this one didn't hit me in the stomach as a standout denial of an obvious goal-scoring opportunity. And I think the outcome here was the right outcome. And fair play to Jared Gillett for staying with his decision.
Okay, Alex Chilovitz, who is the VAR, is an expert VAR and bought in for that purpose. Why did he feel the need to intervene?
Well, because he's looked at the pictures. It's probably a little bit of a misread on his part. I think the bit that probably did it was the ball. He probably felt the ball wasn't going as wide as it was. He's looked at that. He's re-looked at it. It's just a bit of a misread. You know, these things can happen. But even though he recommends a review and Jared Gillett goes to the monitor, I think we'll all agree we did come to the right outcome.
Yep, absolutely. Can you just remind me of the 4 things that a referee has to take into consideration during DOGSO? Denial of a goal-scoring opportunity.
So are you in possession of the ball or likelihood of regaining possession? Distance from goal, direction of travel, and the number of?
Defenders.
Covering defenders. Well done, Sam. You're learning. Every day's a school day, my friend.
Get my extra stripe on my t-shirt.
Absolutely.
Late in the game, there was a penalty which was given for Crystal Palace. And this is a game-changing, match-affecting decision. Palace given a penalty in added time. Mark Gahey and Bafode Diakite tangling in the box. And despite both players having hold of each other, the referee gives Palace a penalty. Now, Andoni Iraola, he thinks that the VAR should have overturned this decision. But he says he doesn't think the VAR got involved because Jared Gillett had rejected an earlier proposal from the VAR, which was the overturn of the denial of a goal-scoring opportunity. Do you think that that is a possibility and that Alex Chilovitz, the VAR, was reluctant to intervene because he'd been overruled by the referee previously in the game?
No, I think we've seen previously where referees have gone to the monitor twice in a game. That's nothing new. I think what we need to understand with this incident was the penalty was given on field by Jared Gillett. I think we want to see that. We've talked a lot this season about holding, prolonged holding. But the one thing with this that stood out, when I watched it, Sam, I went penalty and the referee blew his whistle. And I knew exactly what had happened. And it was Diakite at no point in the proceedings paid any attention to the ball. He had no intention. He didn't look at the ball. He didn't challenge for the ball. He didn't know where the ball was. He only had eyes on Mark Gahey. And he had his arms round him. Now Gahey's trying to get free. Make no mistake about that. But because the ball is in the air and travelling, he doesn't look at the ball. And the decision then, of course, is given on field by Jared Gillett, which was a really positive decision. And it keeps the momentum going on. We talk about holding in the box and grappling, and it was the right decision. Now, for the VAR to intervene here, it has to be, we talk about the clear and obvious error. Was it a clear and obvious error? Well, you're unpicking, and you don't want to be unpicking these decisions. I thought it was a really positive decision, and Jared Gillett should receive praise for that, because it keeps the flow going with grappling and holding, which we don't want to see.
Okay, and it is sustained and impactful holding, apparently. How difficult is this to define, and how difficult is it, therefore, to sell to people like me watching the game? Was that sustained? Was that impactful? What's the difference between the two? Because there's a lot of grappling that goes on very often at set pieces that doesn't go punished. In fact, I looked at this incident several times, and there were 4 different separate tangles going on inside the penalty area at the same time. Why was this one punished?
I think it was a standout one, Sam, for the reasons I've made. I think the ball was the clue. If you'd have asked Diakite where the ball was, he didn't have a clue what it was, and he wasn't interested. He'd paid no attention to it. I mean, I think you're right. There probably could have been 3 penalties there, the way it was going on, but we've got this situation where we're seeing a positive approach from referees. But if you're going to pay no attention to the ball, it was akin to a basketball move, wasn't it? Where you're shepherding somebody, you're not interested, you've only got eyes on the opponent, you're going to run the risk. And it was given on field, and I think we should give the referee praise for actually doing that and making sure that when people said at the start of the season, how long is this going to last? Oh, it'll die a death. It won't happen. It'll be 2 weeks and everything will change. Get to the international break, it won't happen again. Well, that's where we are, and well done, Jared.
Well done. I see Chris is giving his friends at the PGMO a big pat on the back for continuing their campaign to reduce sustained and impactful holding in the penalty area. No cuddling going on in our game, that's for sure. Right, let's get to Manchester City. Now, this one hasn't been talked about that much because Manchester City 2, Everton 0. A bit of a routine victory for Manchester City after a tough first half. Tony Harrington is the ref. The VAR is Nick Hopton, and there was a potential handball by Bernardo Silva around about the hour mark in this game. Now, James Garner has an effort blocked by Bernardo Silva's arm, but the referee waves it away. The Blues were awarded a corner. It comes off his back arm as he's stretching. So he's stretching and sort of turning, and his arm goes behind him, and the ball hits that. Now, no penalty was given. I think many people will gloss over it, but I think there's a strong argument to say that he made his body unnaturally bigger. And if you go back to earlier in the season and compare it to other decisions, like Matt Cash, I think, in the game against Fulham, which I think some of us thought was a penalty and some of us didn't, whatever. This is one of those subjective calls, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I've looked at this. I looked at it a couple of times. As you said, the shot came in from James Garner. What he's actually doing, Bernardo Silva, is he's stretching with his right leg to block the shot, and his right arm is out in front of him. And it's a natural movement for his arm to be out of the back. It's actually vertical to the ground, his arm, and it strikes him. You know me, Sam. I'm honest, if I'm refereeing that game, there's no way I would point to the spot for that. I just don't see it. I just think his arm is just in a natural position. It's where you'd expect him to be for that particular body movement.
It reminds me a little bit, not exactly the same, but there was this incident in the Chelsea-Fulham game where Chalobah sends a ball goalwards, and then there's a player that turns on the edge of the penalty area. I can't remember who it was now. And again, it sort of hits his arm as he's moving. And that was deemed as being in an unnatural position. So who decides what's natural and what's not natural? Because there's no sort of prescriptive description of that. It's down to the referee's judgment, isn't it? So 1 week you're going to get that given and 1 week you're not.
Well, you're always striving for consistency, aren't you? And I think with handball, it's one of those decisions that you don't go looking for trouble. It stands out, you look at it, you think, that doesn't look right. And then, if you think it's a penalty, you give a penalty. And if you're wrong, obviously, if the VAR feels you've made an error, they'll send you to the monitor. I think with this one, because he's stretching with his right foot, it's his right arm that's out. His sort of left arm is behind him. It's dropping down, as I've mentioned, and it just strikes him. He's not moving his arm to the ball. He's not moved his arm away from his body. I just think it's a natural thing. I think sometimes when your arm's up, then we're in a different sphere with that one. But I'm comfortable that this wasn't awarded on field.
It's another example of England being in a great place with handball. Right, okay, let's move on. Well, it's been a good week for the referees and the VAR officials, and they're going to get extra help further down the food chain. Well, that's the plan anyway, because FIFA is trialling a new manager-initiated video review system called the Football Video Support. It's designed as a cost-effective and scalable alternative to VAR, specifically for competitions with fewer cameras, up to around about 4, and limited resources. Now, how it works is this. Manager-led challenges. Each team receives 2 challenge cards to request a review. They twirl a finger and a hand, and they give a card to the 4th official immediately after an incident. Tennis style. So it's like this. Here's the card. Tennis style system. If a challenge is successful, the team keeps its 2 challenges. If it fails, they lose 1. There are specific instances in which it can be used for only potential clear and obvious errors relating to goals, penalties, or direct red cards. Unlike VAR, FVS is not monitored constantly by dedicated video match officials. The review is only triggered when a manager makes a separate challenge, putting the onus on the teams rather than a different officiating crew. Now, the system is already being piloted in various competitions with encouraging results. According to FIFA, the rulemaker IFAB, the 2 of them have said it's been used in FIFA youth tournaments like the Under-20 and Under-17 World Cups, professional leagues including Italy's Serie C and Spain's Women's Liga F, with over 200 matches already played using the system. Is this then a sort of VAR light for divisions that don't have the resources to spend all the money on the cameras and the big setup and the hubs and all of the officials, which we're sort of short of anyway, and it's a possibility that maybe you can see this all the way down into non-league.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously there are financial restrictions. What we've learned up to now is that it's been very cost effective. It's been trialled successfully. I think it's been done in over 200 matches now, Sam, and the feedback has been really, really good. You know, we talk about the manager twirling his finger with the card. A player can also request a review as well. I think I've read that, which, and again, you know, you can say to the manager, request a review. I find it quite interesting because I'm also a massive a rugby league fan, and we see this in rugby league, you know, the captain's challenge, where you have a challenge, you keep it. If your challenge is unsuccessful, you lose it. With this, you've got 2. I think in the first game in this tournament in the under-20s, I think a manager tried to challenge a decision after 10 minutes and lost one, which was quite interesting. But why not? I mean, football is really innovative, isn't it? We see it every year. We see different things that happen behind the scenes. Will it filter lower down? I'm not sure, but I'm quite sure that everything will be reviewed, analysed, assessed, evaluated, and if they feel that it will work, it will be down to obvious competitions to decide whether they want to take it on board. And I think it's been used as well in the Under-17s World Cup. So, yeah, it's just for the 3 things that you've mentioned: goals, penalties, and red cards, not second yellows. So I'll be interested to see how it pans out over the coming months.
The problem I have with it is that we're sort of creating a 2-tier system, aren't we? We're creating a full VAR setup for what we deem to be the elite and the rich leagues that can afford all of that. And then we're suggesting that there should be another system for somebody else. And then, of course, grassroots football will not have this. So you've almost got, whereas before everybody played the same game, you could grab a couple of jumpers and use them as goalposts and, as the cliche goes, and go down the park and play football with your mates. Now, all of a sudden, the game has moved on to such an extent that it's become very technologically advanced at the top end. Then there's a middle tier, and then there's those that don't have any of the technology, and it is a different game all the way through.
I think the beauty of football is it is innovative, and we're always trying and testing schemes, what have you. I mean, if you look at our country in England, we've got a grassroots football. We've trialled body cam. We have Simbin. I went to a game recently and saw a player get Simbin, so we have that. I think this is something, again, I mean, there's nothing to say that this will become effective. It purely is a trial. And there'll be a lot more work to do, a lot more tournaments, a lot more competitions, a lot more feedback. And then it'll have to be, you know, would it then become part of the laws of the game? I think VAR obviously is in the laws of the game. That's here to stay. We know that. But I think anything that can help, you know, accurate decision making, anything that can assist match officials to get to better outcomes, it is good. But at the end of the day, Sam, it's all about the money and the resources.
Should the FBS be seen as a temporary sort of stepping stone for leagues that are thinking about maybe aspiring to implement full VAR, or is it actually a valid permanent alternative in its own right? And could you see a scenario that eventually comes about where people go, actually, scrap VAR, let's use this instead?
I don't think so. I mean, I look at the IFAB, they talk about VAR a lot. You know, are they going to use it more? Was one suggestion for more things. I think at the end of the day, it's all down to cost at the top end. You know, you look at the Champions League and world tournaments, World Cups, what have you. Premier League, we've got it, and across Europe, we see that. I think that's here to stay. But I just think that anything that helps accurate decision making on a particular game of football will help. But as I said, I'm a big rugby league fan. I watch the Captain's Challenge. I find it interesting how it's used, and I like it.
Do you think it places a little bit of unnecessary extra pressure on a boss? You know, like, can you imagine Ange Postecoglou at the weekend having a responsibility for making a challenge to a decision, as well as having to worry about the fact that his owner's left halfway through the game because he's not happy with the performance?
At the end of the day, you've got to be able to multitask, haven't you? And perhaps when you're in the technical area, perhaps you might just nominate one of your senior players who can say to the gaffer in the technical area, "Gaffer, challenge that," and he's got to twirl his finger and put his card up. So We'll watch it. Let's talk about it again in a couple of 3 months and see how it's panning out. But as I said, up to now, the feedback's been really good with what they've seen in these tournaments.
Chris, good to see you after your holiday, nice and refreshed. Thank you very much for today's assessments of all the decision-making in the Premier League. We'll be back next week. Remember, we're available on the Premier League All Access feed. If you want to listen to the podcast, you can watch us on the talkSPORT YouTube channel. There's loads of clips on social. Chris is very popular on Instagram. We'd love your feedback. Thank you very much for listening and watching. Give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast and tell all your friends about Men in Black. We'll be back next week.